she's just really not a nice lady.
And that's why this afternoon I've informed my caucus, my cabinet, and my party that I have personally paid for the costs associated with the recent South Africa trip.
Other government planes take off, half empty, headed to the same place at the same time. Seems like no members of this cabinet actually want to travel with each other.
I'm Chris Varco. Welcome to Inside Politics. It's been a thunderclap of a week in politics this week, Don. I don't know how else to describe what we've just gone through. We've had the questions about the Premier's travel. We've had questions about the Premier taking government planes to PC fundraisers. She paid back the $45,000 to go to South Africa. Then she apologized.
I want to sincerely apologize to Albertans for these costs. And I put in place measures to make sure that this never happens again.
Then we had Len Weber standing right here, give a remarkable sort of attack upon the Premier and the reason why he's leaving, and described her as not a nice lady.
The way this leadership is run is through intimidation and bullying, and people basically are, I believe, afraid to speak up and talk.
We had a caucus meeting filled with turmoil. We've had a couple of cabinet ministers attack Weber. We had a showdown at the PC caucus yesterday, and the Premier put on some sort of probationary work plan. What do you make of all this?
There's no precedent. In the 43 years of the Tory regime, premiers have been in trouble before. Premiers have even been punted by the party over time through a process. But I don't think there's ever been, well, I know there's never been a premier, certainly in this much public trouble, with their party, with their caucus. What happened during the week was almost like the ultimate political sin for a premier to stumble into, even accidentally, which is the week before they introduced this good news budget, and most people agree a surplus is okay after all these years. And then all the news, all the subsequent announcements by ministers of what's happening in their areas got totally blurred and buried by this. That's very bad for a premier and the leadership. And basically, we've had a fracturing of discipline. When you get ministers and MLAs tweeting against other ministers and MLAs around this meeting that was being held in private on Saturday, that wasn't really even a private meeting. You know, I mean, the phone rings off the hook all day long in certain quarters, even journalists, right? It's unbelievable.
I just thought we had more drama this week with the Tory caucus than probably we've ever seen. I mean, it felt like we were watching some sort of Kardashian family reunion going on. You didn't know where it was going next, and everybody seemed to basically splinter out into their own groups. Can they pull it back together? Can the Premier pull it back together? I'm not certain.
Well, it's entirely up to the Premier, and I'm not sure how this is going to play, because she spent $45,000 to make this right, and she didn't even take credit. If you're going to spend that much of your own money, you might as well at least make sure you're going to get all the credit you possibly can. But she continues to refer to it as a distraction. I'm told that she annoyed some of the party people in the meeting by saying that some people didn't even want her to give the money back, and then she said it publicly, which made some of them madder again. It's a question of where you go from here. Do you say, look, this is a check stub for $45,000. You know, and here's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I messed up from beginning to end, and this is going to make it right, and I hope this price of a pound of flesh in Alberta is good enough. But she doesn't seem to be able to take that step onto the personal level to reconnect with people.
And then the last thing that we got to talk about is they've given her a work plan. It sounds like she's on some sort of, double secret probation or something. I'm not quite sure where this goes next. But as one Tory told me, this hasn't been resolved yet. What do you make of a work plan for a premier imposed by a party?
Well, it's like she's on a day parole or adult supervision or something like that. It's quite remarkable, actually, for her to come out and say, well, there is a work plan for the Premier. And I think probably realistically what it is them working on ways of pulling the party and the government back together, because there's a tremendous amount of hostility there between some ministers and MLAs and the party. It's very dysfunctional. So I'm sure they talked about these kind of really practical things, but it sounds like and perhaps it is, that they really have her on watch, and they've made it very clear to her, and they want her to do and not do certain things.
My question is to the Finance Minister, whose department runs the fleet. What is going on over there?
So, Don, this week, I don't think we're going to be talking about government business. I think we're going to be talking about the PC party and where Redford goes from here. We saw this new poll, which has just come out today. It's got the Tories behind 46-23 to the Wild Rose. We've seen the Wild Rose now starting to pick up some momentum, but maybe most remarkably is the fact that the Premier trails Danielle Smith in virtually every key category of which concerns people. So I guess, what do you make of what the Premier's got to do next?
Well, I think she has to make some specific changes, and the traditional way of doing that is to do some changes with your staff and your office and things like that. She has to develop a new relationship with her caucus and cabinet. She has to be based on trust and friendship and loyalty. That's a hard job to do in this situation. She's got to somehow turn the agenda, the public agenda, to what they're doing in government, which even the party directors, when they met on Saturday, my understanding is that they said, hey, we like what you're doing. We just don't like the stuff that you're dumping on top of it, and we'd like to, deal with the stuff that we're actually doing. So that's the biggest job for her, is to get people refocused on government announcements. We could have a blizzard of good news things coming out of government, the more budget stuff. But the question is, will the public and the media pay any attention? All it's going to take is one more little trip, a travel thing, something like that, and she'll be right back into it. And that's the problem. Her baseline is so low. If something else happens, the trouble gets worse and worse, right?
Don't you think that, for me, that the external issues of what the government's doing in the House almost is secondary to what's going on internally? That she's got to build bridges, she's got to have outreach, she's got to somehow, as you say, sort of mend the fences that have been trampled down by dissatisfied caucus.
Yeah, and their one effort at making this right and dealing with it was to put Sandra Jansen out on Don Martin's Power and Politics show, and she made that clanger remark about Neil Weber should go back to being an electrician, and that just further sort of exploded out under the door the divisions in the caucus, with them or their MLA saying, well, my son's an electrician and I'm proud of it. I mean, they just don't seem to be able to get any kind of public relations grip on this. But there's a pretty wide expectation in caucus, cabinet, and the government that there will be staff changes. It's a traditional way of doing things. It may not even be the problem, but it'll probably happen.
I'm told scapegoating may be next. Is that sort of the next card to played in this drama?
Well, yeah, but who's the ultimate scapegoat? Is it the staff or the Premier? Who's responsible? Ultimately, she is.
I work very hard to work with people, to bring people together.
He said I wasn't kidding. We always go through our winners and losers of the week, Don. I think my winner and my loser is the same person, and it's Alison Redford for the obvious reason that she's a loser because she's really had her personal credibility assailed, and I thought in a very particularly damaging way. And I think if we look back a year from now as a moment, if the Premier's in real trouble, this will be the week where it is. But conversely, I think she's the winner because she survived this week. And if she manages to stay Premier and win the next election, we're going to look back at this week as a remarkable sort of story of resiliency. So that's why she gets the winner and the loser of the week for me. How about for you?
Well, for me, it's Danielle Smith. She's the winner because she's way up in the polls. Her party is almost over 50%, which is new. Danielle herself is over 50%. She's got majority support from people. The Premier, by contrast, is way down in both those categories. So that's really good for Wild Rose. It's good for fundraising. It's good for their reputation. It's something they can take out there when they're talking to potential big-name candidates. Very, very good. On the other hand, not good, because strategically they don't want to be this high up right now. That they were in this position before the last election. Remember what happened? They fell off the cliff.
Right.
So their strategic calculation is they'd rather lie low and not be doing quite this well, because then before they've quite reinvented themselves into a more moderate party, they've come under more scrutiny than perhaps they want before they get that done. So you've noticed they've been very quiet. You notice they haven't been introducing much in the way of what they consider to be scandal material with the government. They really have been sort of holding their fire.
The other thing I think is that if we go back to Redford for a sec, because I think that's where we're going to be looking this week is if we're looking at defining weeks in Alison Redford's career, we would obviously look back to the week where she won the leadership race, and her remarkable performance in the debate after her mother died. Yeah. The week before she won the election, where they made a remarkable comeback. It really struck me there is that again she showed resiliency. I guess the question is, has she got more resiliency ahead of her?
We've underestimated her. The public's underestimated her. My understanding of what she did on Saturday with those directors was pretty much pitch perfect. She was really good, and she did get a standing O at the end, And it wasn't because they're happy with her. It wasn't because they're all foursquare behind her. It's because they appreciated the fact that she sat there and she took it. She didn't argue. She just absorbed the anger and the concern of her party. And so she does have, and as everybody who's ever dealt with her one-on-one knows, she can be extremely effective. I mean, this is not a negligible politician at all. So there's one sort of strategic thing in Wild Rose. If you've got something, if you're going to go after, you bring her down now. They seem to think you wait till later to try and get all this stuff done about somehow getting the Premier out of office. There's the other school of thought is no, do it now because you never know. She could be, by next year, she could be very popular.